What's the craziest thing an ex-friend or lover has done to you? My friend's girlfriend called the police and told them that he had told her that he kept hearing voices telling him to kill her, which was a complete fabrication. The cops came and put him in a psychiatric ward for 3 days of observations until the doctors finally believed he was sane. She did it during final exam week when he was in college. She was straight evil. I got arrested and spent around 32 hours in jail because he pulled a prank on me. He was the designated driver. We went to a party and I drank more than I should have. He dropped me off just over a block from my house. When I got out of the back of the car, I didn't recognize anything. I reached for my phone, but realized that I didn't have it. I walked the block looking for a street I knew, but couldn't find one. I then picked a direction to walk in to search for a major street. Apparently he had thought it'd be funny to drop me off in the wrong neighborhood instead of at my house and lifted my cell phone off me so I couldn't call for help. Supposedly his plan was to let me wander around lost for like 10 minutes and then find me to actually take me home. He never found me. After a few hours of walking around lost, I had sobered up and was thirsty. I had found a larger street, but it was like 2 a.m. at that point and everything was deserted, so I couldn't ask anyone for help. Eventually I saw a police car patrolling and flagged them down for help. They told me that I was over 10 miles from my house and that I was in a very unsafe neighborhood. They didn't believe my story. After some discussion they offered to give me a ride home, but asked me to put my hands behind my back while they searched me for weapons. I complied and they immediately cuffed me and told me that they were arresting me for public intoxication. I didn't have money at the time, so I didn't want to call anyone to post bail for me. Also, I kept getting told that they'd release me as soon as I was processed, because I was already sober. There were no windows in the holding cell, no clock, and they never dimmed the light, so I and the others had no concept of time. I was fed twice and had access to water and a toilet. I managed to fall asleep a few times, but I kept waking up shivering. When I was finally released, it was 9 a.m. a whole day after I'd been arrested. My roommate had reported me missing and had been informed that I'd been arrested. I was able to call my roommate from a payphone and get him to pick me up. A few weeks later I found out that the charge of public intoxication had been dropped, so thankfully I didn't have to pay a fine or take DUI classes. I have no idea what the hell is wrong with my friend who pranked me. He did apologize and felt bad, but I stopped hanging out with him after that. Got mail delivered to my house when she found out I was going to break up with her. Then wouldn't leave when I did break up with her. I called the police and since she received mail at my house they said it was officially her residence as well. I had to call my landlord and have him evict me to get her to leave. Once she left he rescinded the eviction notice and I moved back in. Showed up to my parents' house while I was with my new girlfriend and told my parents how we couldn't break up because I had sex with her and so we had to be life partners. Parents were ultra conservative, so it was a fun time. Edit, apparently this level of crazy is more common than I thought. Either that or my ex really got around, lol. Came over to my house and punched me awake because I didn't answer her phone call. Because I was sleeping. Oh, and she stabbed me with a pencil. My husband. We were high school sweethearts. After 4 kids and 16 years of marriage he cheated on me. But he didn't tell me for over a year. On the day he chose to tell me about his affair I was in the middle of chemo for breast cancer. I was bald, sick and had only one breast. My mom had passed away 10 days earlier, and it was my birthday. Good times. This was 12 years ago. Happily I am healthy, my kids are thriving and we are divorced. But YA, never saw that one coming. I learned the whole cheating lesson from an ex, and honestly the worst part about it wasn't even the act itself, it was the fact that to this day she legitimately doesn't believe she did anything wrong. After all, she still loves me, it's just sex with everyone else. So, therefore, I'm the asshole for dumping her. Counting the years till my son turns 18 and I can just block her number for good. One time my GF at the time was staying over. I'd been at work late the night before so I wanted to sleep in. She tried to wake me. It didn't work so I fell back to sleep. So after an unknown amount of time, I was in deep sleep. She apparently lost patience. She put her mouth directly against my ear and screamed as loud as she could. A high-pitched horror movie scream. The pain was immediate. It's been about 15 years and my left ear, if I'm in a loud place, buzzes like I've got a wasp in my ear. It sounds exactly like a blown-out speaker. This was just one of the things she did. When I broke up with her she told all her friends I beat her up and they still believe her. Tried to tell me she was pregnant when I broke up with her for being a compulsive liar, which just confirmed that she was indeed a compulsive liar. My ex came to my apartment while my now husband was there. Rang the doorbell and admitted that he'd been watching us through the glass in the front door. Luckily we weren't fooling around, just watching a movie. Proceeded to threaten to kill my husband after the inevitable confrontation. Then proceeded to try and get hired at my husband and I, place of work, and got so far as the interview before I found out and called HR to let them know he would be a threat to us. A couple of weeks later my mail goes missing and turns out he'd taken it and proceeded to pay my electric bill. Glad that's behind me. She tried to do a three-way with me and her friend once she found out I had a new girlfriend, in order to break us up. I declined. Then she got her friend, yes the same one, to hook up with my buddy, who then convinced him to invite her to a party at his house I went to. I went into the bathroom and when I opened the door she was standing there. Freaked me the frick out. I said, "Hi, excuse me, I'm about to leave this house," when she pushed me as hard as she could back into the bathroom and came in and locked the door. At this point I freaked out and just started yelling for help. My buddy and a few others came and unlocked the door and pulled her out and I was able to get out of the bathroom. I started walking upstairs to head to the door and get in my truck to leave, when she flies out the door and runs to my truck. She stands there while I am standing there in disbelief. At this point we had been broken up for months. I walked back inside and one of her friends approached me and told me if I told her, the friend, that I never wanted to see or talk to my ex again she would let me leave. I complied and told her friend that it was over and I never wanted anything to do with my ex again. I waited a few and peeked outside and saw the coast was clear and started heading to my truck. I hear a scream and look over and my ex is running full speed at me screaming. Out of nowhere another lady does a full-on tackle of my ex and says get the frick out of here. As I drive away I get a call from the party saying she locked herself in the bathroom with a knife threatening to off herself. I called her parents and kept driving. This all happened after she did the following. Called me hundreds of times from a dozen numbers to which I blocked and requested she doesn't call. Egged new girlfriend's car. Tried to get me to do threesome. Tried to make me frick buddies. Asked a very desperate friend of mine to prom hoping to get in our group. Followed me to work, home. 2 years later, I have a new phone number and I'm in college. I get a call and answer it. It's her. No idea how she found me. She asked if I went to the local university to which I replied yes. I did not actually go there, I went to a state college. She enrolled in that university. That's the end of that story. I was in the military at the time. Ex called the base and told them I was passing her secrets. Also called my mom and told her I died, but the army wouldn't tell her. And called my landlord to tell them I was killed so they should release the apartment. Yeah. That ended up being hell for me. The military takes that shit very seriously. I was pulled out of formation and arrested, no idea what is going on. Took 2 weeks before they believed me and released me back to my unit. By then the landlord had actually started boxing up all my stuff to sell off. I still think about the karma she has coming to her at some point. And we had only dated for maybe 3 months. What the frick, she was crazy. My ex planted a dog camera facing my bed before leaving. Took me a week to realize she had put it there. She also rented the flat directly beside me and would monitor who was coming in and out of my flat and text them to see if we were doing anything. Fun times. Edit, the dog camera was one of those ones you can log onto your phone, check up on the dog and speak to it, dispense treats, etc. She had bought it as a Christmas present the year before. We unplugged and left it in a drawer because we thought it would be creepier if it got hacked and someone was watching us. Joke's on me I guess. At the time of breaking up I generally had a lot of my mates around. So they were the ones who were being messaged by her. They would also say walking up to the flat that they could see her perched on her windowsill seeing who was approaching. Came downstairs, he was cleaning his gun, heard him name bullets for me. Cheated on me and sent me videotapes of it, greeting me in them and telling me I'd never be enough while still blackmailing me so I wouldn't leave. Edit, it was a male ex. Not a she, I don't know why anyone would assume that lol. She met me for a date, went to go meet her parents. I had a beer with her dad while she went upstairs and fricked her brother-in-law. Then she came downstairs and left with me to resume our date. I found out after the fact, got tested and dumped her ass. An ex poisoned my dog. Oh, I'd be going to prison for 10 to 15. She literally stole my bed. I had an ex that, after we broke up, came to the house to get her stuff. I wasn't home, but she convinced the landlord, who knew us, to let her in. I had told the property management specifically to not let her in. Anyway, I came home and my house was completely empty outside of my dog and an empty fish tank. I'm not exaggerating the empty. She took everything that wasn't nailed down, food from the fridge, cupboards, pantry, etc. She took the shower curtains. We had 2 irons, she took both of them. Took my furniture, TVs, game systems plus games. This bitch even took the light bulbs out of the light fixtures. And not just the easy to access ones. The ones that are above those apartment panels everyone knows about. I called the police and told them I had been robbed. When they got there, the landlord said he let her in. Her name is not on the lease. They told me it was a civil matter and they couldn't do anything about it. I was obviously upset and being loud. My ex-army buddy was with me. The cops threatened to bash my head into the wall, called me a mutt, I'm mixed, and then left. Editing because this comment kinda blew up. We tried going after the property management. Unfortunately, their excuse was there was nothing in writing and the property management didn't recall me telling them not to let her in. She had already established domicile unfortunately, so she has the same rights that I do as a tenant. I would have had to evict her or prove that she somehow posed a threat to my life. Laws for domicile in Florida are extremely ridiculous for situations like this. She attacked me with a ukulele while screaming. We had been arguing heatedly, and she went to another room. I assumed she was just getting some space and cooling off. A moment later she came running out of the room, screaming and swinging a little guitar at me. We didn't break up then, but eventually did, and that incident was the main reason. However, until then I could never be calm if she was in another room. When I had one lung for a hole between waiting for a donor. I had an ex-friend stab me in the chest where I didn't have a lung, because he thought it wouldn't hurt because I didn't have a lung. She would punch me in the stomach in the spot that makes you lose your breath, almost every day, because she thought it was funny. Ex-wife befriended a pedophile on parole at her job, and AMP bought him cell phones with cash for him to use to keep in touch with his former young lovers, violating his parole conditions of having no internet access, smartphones, or social media accounts of any kind. She was dumb enough to admit all of this in front of security cameras with microphones. Footage was provided to the local sheriff's department once it was discovered. Soon after this, she secretly planned to move him into our home and gave him our Wi-Fi password. She acquired a gun and bragged to her co-workers about how she was going to get rid of me and give the pedophile his freedom back. Luckily, one of her co-workers got a hold of me and told me her plan. Within an hour I had confronted her and our 7-year marriage was over. Since she didn't get to use the gun on me, her psychosis drove her to use it on our dog once I left the house and relationship because she didn't like the way the dog was looking at her. Oh, and our local sheriff's department was utterly, frustratingly useless despite all the evidence of plotting a murder, possessing a weapon in the living space of a convicted felon, and numerous parole violations. Turns out an officer involved was just arrested for numerous sex crimes himself. Claimed she had cancer, so I rearranged my job to move 300 kilometers to help her out and look after my daughter. Then she stabbed herself in the stomach to make it look like she'd had a biopsy when I dropped her off to the hospital. The DV accusation was also fun. Fortunately by that point she had acted so crazy around everyone that her friends, the child services worker who was investigating her and the cops were all like, LOL, sure he did, and left it at that. The only pity is that for my daughter I'll never be around her mother again without witnesses. I'm not risking a false accusation like that again. Edit, I forgot the best part. She'd been lying to her family about the cancer as well, so at some point that day I realized that her mother was expecting her to have gone in for a biopsy at 11 AM, and that it was now 6 PM and she hadn't been called. I had to call my ex's mother and tell her her daughter was nuttier than squirrel poo laced with shrooms and that the cancer was a lie. Also because this was COVID travel restriction times, she couldn't travel to visit her. My own mother handled it like a champ and told me that traveling to help me out for a little while was far too much to ask an AMP, that she was ashamed that I'd asked her for help as she'd never asked anyone for anything. Needless to say we don't talk anymore, and AMP, I haven't trusted another woman since, my daughter accepted of course. Called me at 3 in the morning to yell at me and call me a whore for liking a YouTube video by Dashi a month before. My emotionally abusive ex and I found each other on a dating site about 5 to 6 years after our relationship fell apart. I had made the mistake of reaching out to her, believing she'd grown as a person and maybe we could get some closure. Her exact words, haha, you're gonna die alone. Found out my long-distant boyfriend of 3 years got married and had a baby while we were together. He was in my town every weekend. It was nuts. Told me he had just tried to secure a gun so he could kill everyone I cared about. I'm not the lover partner in this scenario, but basically my dad was upset with my mom for negligent behavior towards my younger siblings, so he started referring to them as our kids when talking to me because I was the one taking care of them. He also said, here's your child support payment, when he gave me money to buy food for them. My mom is the abusive one, but the way he handled it was pretty yikes. Don't drag me into it, man. Took pics of me and my phone number and created a Grindr account. I got so many PP pics. Was pretty funny though. Cheated on me, then cheated on me again after we went to months of therapy. Then emailed my parents and told them I was bad at sex. Got a tattoo of me on his back, dumped me 2 weeks later, wanted to get back together 2 months later. When I refused, he slit his wrists in my driveway. Edit, yes, he survived. He honestly didn't do a very good job of it. Not to mention he didn't take into consideration how long it takes to bleed out. I'm not traumatized and was a long time ago. I drove his stupid ass to the hospital and got his blood all over my car. If I had it over again, I'd call the EMTs and go get ready for the date I had that night, because I shouldn't have put myself to be alone with someone that unstable. Sent me $1 on Venmo just to say one last frick you. I dunno how frick this is compared to most. But the ex said she was going with her kids, we didn't live together, obviously, to stay at a resort, live in LV, when in fact she was staying at New York casino with a truck driver. Said driver got extremely drunk and belligerent the next afternoon, and she clearly must have too, because she ended up passing out in his truck cab that evening as he in a rage withheld her phone from her. He evidently discovered the phone video of me and her doing the deed and proceeded to post it on her Facebook page. I started to get texts, calls around 7 p.m. from friends, then her close friends. Was insanely embarrassing and heartbreaking at the same time. I was in a bar within the hour trying to calm down. Since said video was not, because of the angle, breaking any FB decency rules and her being passed out, it took until 10 to 11 a.m. the next day before it was removed. By that time her ex-husband, bizarre, already had a missing persons report with the police. Everyone from her hometown was bugging him and me. Most thought I posted it, at first, as to where TF she was. Cops had to come to me at the casino I work at and ask me if I wanted to press charges. Of course I didn't. What a clusterfrick, sad face. Got into a fight at the strip club that I didn't agree to go to. Took my keys, threw it away, then drove off with my phone. I was far away from home, 2 a.m., walking alone, with a bunch of bruises. Thank God, I find a way out of that toxic bullshit. Not exactly crazy, but we were kids. My ex-best friend bullied me for over 5 years in primary school. It was like a masterclass in abusive friendships. You're not allowed to talk to them or I'll stop being your friend because no one else will tolerate you, sort of thing. And it was coming from a 7-year-old girl. She used to hit me a lot and was the reason I had believed I was fat, even though I was a really tiny wee girl. The biggest thing though was when it was our big theater production at the end of school. The entire school was watching and also our parents. I went on stage and she tripped me up as I went up the stairs, leading to me smacking onto the set and knocking a bunch of stuff over. One of the most embarrassing moments of my life, and I was only 10. Poke holes in my condoms. Had a girlfriend edit old Facebook Messenger timestamps to make it look like I was cheating on my new girlfriend. Would like to say that my taste got better, but I got stabbed after that by an ex. LOL. Used to run a small DIY punk venue. My ex, who was angry with me at the time, came to a huge Halloween show we put on, went into the bathroom, lit the trash can on fire, locked the door behind her and left. I busted the door open and extinguished the fire before the building caught. I had approx 250 kids in the venue that night. Shake my head. Ex-boyfriend just absolutely lost it when I had enough and ended things. He took my dog when he went back to work, away from home, told my parents I was suicidal so he had to know where I was, and when I tried staying at either of my parents' places, my vehicle would get vandalized. Threatening to take me to the police because he had someone do something to his house and demanded that I give him money because it had to be me. I was at the bar on the night in question. Blackmailed me for my dog, threatening that he was gonna have one of his friends shoot her, or that he was going to release her in traffic and if she gets hit it's my fault. My work had to create a plan where the building would go on lockdown should he show up, as he was threatening that too. The final straw was when my brother left his phone out and my ex was non-stop calling it. I picked up and lost my absolute shit. I found a place to rent, told nobody, not even family, as my dad thought I was being dramatic and should forgive him because he's a good guy on paper. Yeah, that man can be another post, and somehow made out all right but drank a bit in this time. My mom sent me a picture one day of my dog in her house. I hauled ass to her house. She will never admit to it, but I think she paid him money so I could have her as she was important to me. Now, she is snoring in bed beside me 6 years later. We'd been broken up for about 10 months and hadn't spoken in 7. For completely unrelated reasons. After our breakup, I'd moved across the country, as in, I had been living on the East Coast and moved to California. She had found out where I lived, flown out there, rented a car, and was parked on my block scouting out my house. In the car was a pair of binoculars, a book on bird watching, to explain to any passers-by why she was staring around a neighborhood with binoculars, and a cat carrier. She didn't have a cat. I did. She was planning to break into my house and steal my cat. She had even bought a return flight ticket back to the East Coast with the pet fee paid. My mom let my best friend and her mom stay with us because they got kicked out of their house, was only supposed to be a temporary thing. A few months later my brother had some serious medical issues come up and had to move home. I moved into the garage so he could have my room. Also side note, but her mom was a hoarder and forks, and spoons were going missing, being left in her room with moldy food. After a month my brother was still not doing well, and having other people in the house was stressing him out and making his condition worse, so we told them they had to move out within 2 months. My mom told her mom that my brother was becoming suicidal because of the pain and wanted to shoot himself. The day that they were supposed to move out they replaced the lock on the bedroom door and said we didn't give them proper notice, even though we did. Later that night her mom called the police and said my brother had a gun and threatened to shoot them. We don't have any guns, and the only person he threatened to shoot was himself because of the physical pain he was in. He only told this to my mom, who told my friend's mom to make her understand how severe his medical condition was getting. They moved out a month later and I have not talked to my ex-best friend since. She left for another man, marry him. Within a year she wanted to have sex with me. Tried to suffocate me. I had fallen asleep on his pull-out couch at his apartment while he went out with friends. I wake up at 1 a.m. and start to pack up my stuff to go home because I had work in the morning. Just as I'm leaving he comes in and says, "Baby, you're still here?" I reply, "Baby, where were you?" in a nice sweet tone. He then starts yelling, calling me every name on the book. I start hysterically crying and he tells me to shut up, but I can't, I just keep crying. So he pushes me on the pullout and puts one hand around my neck and pillow on my face, and I can't breathe. Some voice in my head told me to stay calm, so instead of struggling I just lay there calmly, and after maybe 30 seconds he picks up the pillow and I got the frick out of there. I sometimes wonder if I would have fought back, would he have held me down longer and killed me? Smashing a salt lamp across my shin, shoving me downstairs, kicking me full force in the jaw, causing it to pop ever since, cheating, lying, using me for a few grand under false pretenses, leaving me stuck with nowhere to go and stuck out in freezing raining for 8 hours, gave my sweet loving dog who never knew a bit of mayonnaise in her life to someone who starved, beat, abused, then eventually shot and killed her. That's just some of the highlights. She was cheating on me, 6 months we weren't intimate, and then she wanted to go bareback. Turns out she was pregnant, not my kid obviously, but wanted me to be the provider as her baby daddy didn't even have a job or savings. She tried to guilt me into taking her back, even offered to have my name on the birth certificate. Then she posted online how I was abandoning her and our child. She stopped after police and my lawyer went to her.